That's right, ladies and gents, today's video is sponsored by me, Mr. H. I am making my own H.P. Lovecraft horror film. Check out the GoFundMe link down below if you want to support independent and original film, and of course, H.P. Lovecraft and horror films. Breaking Lights is an exploration of depression, suicide, and mental health, and using that and H.P. Lovecraft as an allegory to explore that narrative. So check it out, the link down below. With that being said, on with today's video. Hello, welcome back to the channel. We've got some updates on Star Trek, namely from Alex Kurtzman. He's said a whole bunch of stuff, so I just want to kind of cover it all, and then we'll do a roundup of thoughts and discussions on it, I guess, because this is the man that is leading the way in Star Trek at CBS. I guess unless Viacom, Paramount, whatever it is now, decide to push away from it. I don't know. But, I mean, he is the guy in charge, at the very least, of the TV aspect. So let's check it out, shall we? And you can let me know your thoughts. If you've already seen this, let me know down below in the comment section. But basically, Star Trek boss Alex Kurtzman recently claimed that the franchise must always be sold to deep fans. Which is interesting, because I guess, weren't they saying for like a long time that, you know, people that like disagreed with them and things like that just like weren't fans, or... It's a bit hypocritical, really, isn't it? During an interview on the Hollywood Reporter's TV's Top 5 podcast, Kurtzman was asked how he approaches his various Star Trek shows in regards to bringing in new fans as opposed to more established Star Trek fans. I think that's a great question. Like, that is a really good question, because I guess it cuts through the crap of whether, you know, someone is, well, it basically reveals someone to be talking out their arse. Which is fairly evidenced here. So Kurtzman actually answered with, I would actually say that you always have to sell the property to the deep fans. I think they are the most. They scrutinize everything in a way that fans of Trek have done since the beginning. And so you can never be doing anything that seeks to sort of say, well, we are only going to hit one group here and we are not going to care about another. Now that always, to me anyway, this kind of response, it was the same with Star Trek Picard, always sings to the people that are making it. When they say something like this, it's them basically saying, well, if you don't like it, it means that you're not actually a fan. I was a massive fan of the character of Jean-Luc Picard. I've watched The Next Generation countless times. Like, I really, really like it. You know, I wouldn't consider myself a Trekkie, but The Next Generation itself and that characterization of Jean-Luc Picard and everything that they got up to, I really, really liked. And I was one of the people that was really looking forward to Picard, but it was just bland. It was like, you know, one step forwards, two steps back. The pacing was all... There were so many things, but this isn't a Picard review. But the point is that, you know, if you can't sell Picard to someone that's a Jean-Luc Picard fan, because that's what I was, then what are you doing? But according to him, I wouldn't be a fan. This is how they kind of work themselves around that sort of quandary. It's a good word, isn't it? Quandary. That being said, I think that the death of great franchises is when you try and please everybody. I think some things have to be really focused on specific groups or specific ideas, and you can assume not everybody will love it. And that's very par for the course of Star Trek, so that's okay. And that's that kind of inbuilt thing of like, well, we're trying to, but hey, look, not everyone's going to like it. Now, he isn't wrong. He isn't wrong at all. But it does seem that overwhelmingly, especially with the hardcore Star Trek fans, is that it's divided them. You know, I'm not going to say all Star Trek fans, hardcore, you know, hate all the new Star Trek, because that's simply not true. But it's definitely divisive, and that's not something that you want. Not divisive to the degree that it is anyway. So the Star Trek showrunner then concluded the question, we are always seeking to please diehard fans, but I think that one of the things Star Trek has not done effectively over time is bring in new people, particularly much younger people. And I don't see any reason why this amazing, amazing story that has existed for 55 years, that is so about everything that we are dealing with in our lives right now, cannot be shared and enjoyed by younger generations as much as it can be enjoyed by die-hard fans. there's nothing inherently wrong with that either, actually. He is right that, yeah, like people, I guess new fans don't really come in that much for Star Trek, but that's because they haven't been making a lot of stuff recently. Or outside of the new Star Trek anyway, sorry. So, you know, to say that you're only trying to please diehard, you know, bring in new people and not diehard fans or vice versa, etc., you're just splitting the fan base, which is a bit of a shame, really. Now, so he would be pressed on the question and was asked which of the shows he views as the most and least accessible to new Star Trek fans. So this will be an interesting response. You know, it's hard to say, honestly, because like we've had a very interesting journey with Lower Decks. Jonathan Frakes once told me a story that when they started Next Generation, people hated it. Die Hard fans hated it. They were like, this is not the Star Trek that I know. This is not Kirk and Spock. 2 years in, everyone started loving the show. And now, of course, it's remembered as one of the greatest, if not the greatest Star Trek shows of all time, depending on which fan you asked. I think what it kind of told me was there will always be an initial reaction to something new, like, oh, this is different, this isn't what I'm familiar with, and so I don't like it. I think that's a bit disingenuous, really. I mean, the thing about the Next Generation was that created new fans, but it's still, I think the Next Generation did a really good job of still keeping to the core of what Star Trek was. Like, the universe, anyway, was still very much, you know, Star Trek. The core infrastructure of the universe was still the same. So that core value aspect was the same, i.e., and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Federation as a whole, it was still this utopia. And that was interesting because it was still telling new stories, but from the same perspective. Whereas the new shows are telling new stories, but from a different perspective, which I think is what is so divisive about from older fans' perspective. Anyway, he then stated, our central premise is that you have to love Star Trek to be making these shows. And I think that in the case of Lower Decks, there was a lot of, oh, what's this? Star Trek's never been a broad comedy before. Oh, they are trying to just cater to the lowest common denominator. That couldn't be less true. If you look at Lower Decks, and it's gratifying to see how people are writing about it now as we get to the end of the season, that is a Star Trek show. It's not just a cheap grab for comedy. Those shows are written to be great Star Trek episodes. Yes, they appeal to younger audiences as much as they will appeal, hopefully to appeal to diehard fans. I think the goal is to always try and find the sweet spot where you're able to get to both. Yeah, again, the point is nothing he's saying is inherently wrong, but it's always the execution of what he actually does behind it which matters. So he continued further, because Kurtzman would then be asked what he thinks about fans who complain about the politics in Star Trek. So this will be so he said all of that, right? And then he gets this question, and he replies with, I find it amazing, but Dan, you are exactly right. Honestly, it's a weird testament to how powerful the franchise is that you can still miss the message completely and love it. I find that to be incredible. So, if we get that, and we can get people who completely get the message and love it, great, fantastic. That's completely glossing over the fact. Also, so let's take his statement, right? Let's take his statement and say, people have watched it, they love it, and they've missed the message, right? So surely that means that you're not being sort of subversive enough. You're not being nuanced enough, right? That's from his own statement. But again, I would still argue, and I've always argued this, like Star Trek is absolutely, there's political, social messages in there. Like 100% there is. But it's told, and this is what I was saying about The Next Generation and Star Trek, is that the core infrastructure is always the same, i.e. it's told from a utopian perspective, humanity's aspect, and then aliens learning from humanity. That's generally speaking what it is. There was, of course, some times where humanity would then learn from the aliens, but it was few and far between. Whereas now they're telling the story of, well, humanity's just dire straits, like it's just an absolute shit show. And that's what I mean by that core infrastructure of Star Trek, the universe being the same, but now it's not. So it goes, this is, again, I disagree with these end statements anyway. But, ladies and gents, he's going to be doing it until 2027, he says. So you better be on board for his commentary, because he's there. That's what he's doing. He's here forever. So basically, Kurtzman hinted that further seasons of Discovery and new projects are planned. So Prodigy is a new thing. It's a Nickelodeon. It's like a kiddie thing. Prodigy marks the 5th series launched since Kurtzman took the television reins of Star Trek. The other 4 include Discovery, Short Treks, Picard, and Lower Decks. 2 other shows have been announced, including Section 31 and Strange New Worlds. There's still no movement on that Section 31. Kurtzman was recently a guest on the same podcast that we just discovered. And he detailed that they've got years and years left on Discovery. Ugh. I watched that new trailer and I did a reaction to it, but CBS blocked it worldwide, so I can't release it. But that is awful. It is an awful trailer. Like, it's so bad. If they ever release the copyright claim that they've got on it, I will release it, because there's some commentary in that trailer of them going, there was just what, it's so on the nose, but painfully so. The dialogue's horrendous. I'm going to say, in all honesty, there are years and years left on Discovery. First of all, Star Trek in general has a long history of going something like 7 seasons minimum, and we just jumped into the future. In a way, it's not that it's a brand new show, but it's a whole new set of variables with a whole new set of ideas and stories. And I don't think we limit ourselves to thinking, oh, we're capped at this place. I'll tell you that when the show starts to feel too stale to us, we'll be rallying to stop it. But for now, it doesn't feel like we're running into a shortage of stories. I mean, that's good. It's good that you're not running into, story shortages. I'd be surprised if you were, to be fair. So Kurtzman explained that Heather Cardin and Aaron Bayers, who work with me at Secret Hideout, we literally just got off a call before this with a network mapping us through 2027. Ugh, dear God. Again, when I say that, it's not like it's set in stone. It's just, okay, here's a plan. Here's what we're looking. Here's how the different shows are going to drop. Consider that it takes a year from start of production to airing, so you have to plan way in advance to get these things done, and you have to stay on top of the zeitgeist and make sure what you're doing is relevant. But too relevant, guys, too relevant. Brexit and Trump and all this nonsense. So you have to plan so far in advance now in different kinds of ways to seem loose and improvisational, but there is nothing loose and improvisational about it. Okay. So there's not an awful lot else there, to be fair. So things are just starting to shoot again. We would have been in production already on Picard, but we couldn't because of COVID. It's pushed our Discovery and Strange New Worlds dates just a little bit, but I think we're actually planning a soundtrack for those. By the time they shoot, we'll have innovated with a couple Star Trek shows, and we will know where we are, and we'll be a little bit more down with the process. Blah 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 blah. It's all yeah. It's a shame, isn't it? Really. All the other stuff is just recap stuff, but. There you go. There's a massive update. Yeah, I don't know. It always feels a bit disingenuous when they come out and say these things, because then they are always really quick to then, throw their sort of hand in the flame and say, well, we hate you as well. Fans that don't like this and blah blah blah. You're not actually fans, and it's just a bit of a shame, really. Like I say, hopefully I've sort of contextualized my thoughts on this better, just to say that, hey, look, I think it's actually an infrastructure thing. Telling new stories is great, but you need to still tell it from the same perspective, because otherwise it'd be like telling, like for instance here, right? It'd be like suddenly telling like an alien story, but being on the side of the company, for instance. It'd be very jarring, right? It'd be very jarring, especially from like old fans' perspective. Might be interesting, but it'd be very jarring if you then started telling it from the company's perspective of being greedy capitalists and go, yes, we definitely need to make this, and then being framed as the good guys. You'd be like, what? Just odd. Framing is everything, and people like certain things for certain reasons. So, especially if they've got massive fan bases, then you kind of need to adhere to that to a certain degree. Definitely some variance here and there, but I don't think they've done much of that. Unless they've gone way, like now, they've gone way off the reservation. But let me know your thoughts down below. If you're new here, please do subscribe. Also, like I said at the start, I have a film that I'm making, so check out the link down below. It's a GoFundMe. Thank you all so much. If you missed yesterday's video, the last one was actually a Hellraiser read-through. I don't think people are being notified of videos anymore, and that's a shame. People really used to enjoy the Hellraiser read-through, so I'll leave it linked above. But thank you so much. Take care.